Thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or those who are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. Our first objective is we want you to know that whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you're encountering, you're not alone. We want to join you to let you know that we together can help you through whatever challenge you may have that at the time may seem too difficult to be able to overcome. Our second objective is to help you determine with a very confident resolve there are multiple solutions, multiple factors involved in any life encounter. It's a matter of thinking into and thinking through the life situation you are encountering to determine the various options, the various solutions that are available to you. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If whatever you're experiencing is a result of a decision you made sometime in the past, such that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you determine the objective facts and factors to evaluate to help you reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and the Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we featured Juli Geske-Peer for our fourth episode, where she addresses interviewing. Marty, there are some people, and I was one of them, who were just fearful and just scared about an interview because I just did not know that I was not confident I would be able to answer any questions correctly. And quite honestly, I didn't have the confidence that I would be the right person to hire. As an interviewer, over a period of time, I learned the skills, having learned from my past what it takes to have some confidence, to learn the people, to have a better idea, better confidence of whether I'm hiring the right person. Marty, what are some of your takes from this podcast?
Ron, Juli answers or talks to the fear of interviewing. She also speaks to the interviewee and the interviewer. And if you are in a position as the interviewee or the interviewer, Juli provides beneficial advice to both parties.
Let's listen together. We can both win from this, those of us who are preparing for an interview and those of us who are interviewing for the next candidate. Let's listen together and learn. Juli, thanks for coming back and rejoining us for our fourth episode. Let's talk about interviewing. And for those listeners who are joining us for the first time, Juli Geske-Peer has gone through various life experiences, which she has chronicled in her book, 5 Senses for Success, and We Can Overcome Anything. And I know that's not the exact subtitle, Juli. Based on your life experience, you, Marty, and I are believers. We can overcome anything. Today, let's talk about interviewing in the context of overcoming. My experience is, and perhaps yours, some interviewers are apprehensive about interviewing and determining if they might be bringing on the right person. At a company level, it is possible that replacing a person could cost anywhere in the range of $65,000 or more. From the interviewee, some of us think, oh my gosh, I am nervous and I'm scared and chilled and my bones are creaking. I don't know if I'll answer the questions correctly, and I am just scared. I'm just totally scared for this, totally scared. Juli, come on board and help us out in any way that you want, but how can you help us as an interviewer to overcome any apprehensions we have? And as the interviewee, how can you help me prepare myself to have a confidence, no arrogance, but just a confidence to interview? Juli, come on and join us. Share with us your expertise.
Oh my goodness. Thank you again, Ron and Marty, for having me back. I love being here with the both of you. And I'm excited for this topic on interviewing. I think it's a really critical part of the engagement of staff with an organization. And as leaders, we have an opportunity to really set it up for positive success, both for ourselves and the candidates that we would ultimately bring in. I think when we are looking for the right person, you use that phrase, we need to start right at the beginning from job description and be looking for the key attributes that we want throughout the whole process. I personally, when I have hired, typically use job description, screener. So with that would be a short phone screener, first interview, and second interview. So I typically use a process like that. And I am getting deeper in each one of those stages. So right on the job description right away, as a leader, I'm making sure that things that are really critical to me from a value or culture standpoint are starting to show up even in the job description. For instance, I might put something like excellent interpersonal skills with the ability to establish and maintain relationships at all organizational levels. So that's hinting at some of the attributes, soft skills that I'm going to be looking at. And you can embed some of those right in the job description. Then when doing a screener, you're obviously going to be looking for the skills that you need in the job. They're going to be unique to each position you're hiring. But even there, I start asking, like, I'll usually embed one cultural type of question, like what's important to you in an organizational culture where you want to work. Something even right in that screening quick conversation that you can start to get a sense of who this person is. Then as moving into, say, a first interview and then ultimately a second interview, I'm embedding a lot of questions that are open-ended questions where I'm hoping to get a sense of the values that the person brings to the table. What's important in the manager that you work with? What are you looking for? What is important in the team members that you work with? Tell me about the best team member you've ever worked with or the best manager you've ever worked with. What was it about that was best? Tell me about the worst. So you get a sense of their values right within the questions that you're asking, because you're opening the floor for them to bring some of those forward. You never know when that's going to happen, I guess. Sorry about that. And then at the beginning of an actual conversation, when I've hired, I usually had the HR department doing that initial screener, but I'm conducting first and second interviews. And the very first interview, I think it's really important for me to establish a comfortable, safe space for the interviewee, because you mentioned how they can come in nervous. I try to do that by having a little just comfort chit chat to start to help them ease their stress, because almost always they're coming in with some level of stress or nervousness. And then I make it clear right up front that I want to conduct the interview in a way where I'm asking them some questions, but then I'm allowing plenty of time for them to ask questions, because I think of it as we're both looking to see if this is a match. And either of us can decide yes or no. And then we decide if we both are ready to move forward, then that's a wonderful thing. It's both sides. In terms of talking about the people coming in nervous, it's hard. I've interviewed some people that are shaking nervous, and I've interviewed people that are pretty confident. I take more time as a leader with the people that are appearing much more nervous, with that kind of chit chat up front to just help them become as comfortable as possible. And I give them validation after I hear whatever responses they are. Oh, I really like that, or something to try and help them ease their stress a little bit. Interviewing is hard, and some people naturally get more stressed about it than others. And so trying to work on that as a candidate, if I happen to be somebody more stressed, I would try to do more practicing. You can do mock interviews with people you know, or with a coach or mentor, and practicing ahead of time can help ease that. Another thing that can help ease that is preparing ahead of time for the questions you think might arise in the conversation, and asking other people what kinds of questions have been most challenging that you've heard in interviews. So those are a few initial thoughts I have.
Good thought points, Julie. Let me go back to your statement about the job description. I too believe it is the program manager's or the leader's responsibility to thoroughly document not just hurry up and put something together, but thoroughly document the person you're looking for. And I do, as you stated, Julie, believe that some of the personal attributes are what I'm looking for, because I'm going to be interviewing to determine those personal attributes. But let me get your thought that in some cases, acquisition is going to be written first. In other words, you're not going to interview everyone. You will screen people based on whatever they write in a cover letter, include in a resume, something of that nature. There will be some criteria by which you screen people. Let's just say you have 100 applicants and you're not going to interview 100 of them. And so for the person who is reading a job description and says, well, I hope I can respond correctly. And in this case, if you are the person interviewing, I want to read into Julie's mind. She's probably looking for just the right words. I wish I could crawl into Julie's mind to know what she's looking for, because based on what I write, she will either select me or pass me over for an interview. Can you start from there, Julie? And if it's the cover letter that might be more important than anything else, can you tell us what to write, maybe what not to write in however I respond to your acquisition request?
I can talk from my personal perspective. So I appreciate somebody who is succinct in a cover letter. I do not want it to be more than a page. I want it to be something that highlights top notes about how the candidate fits the job description. I always start with reading the cover letter because I also feel that often you can get a tone or feel for the way the person kind of presents themselves depending on how they write it. Then I dig into the more detail that's typically in the resume, and I would keep those to 1 to 2 pages. I've seen cover letters that have gone on for 3-4 pages and resumes that have gone on for 3-4 pages. And while somebody may have a great depth of experience, I think as a candidate, I always want to be mindful of the hiring person's time and effort to get to a yes to bring me in or to have me screened by HR or whatever it may be. So the goal of your cover letter and resume is to get that first step, whatever that first step is. After the first step, then your goal is to get to the second step, etc. So by writing your cover letter, making it clear that you match the attributes in the job description, you have set yourself up for success. Of the 100, let's say, pretend candidates that might be applying, maybe only 50 of them actually have all the required attributes that are in the job description. So you've set yourself up by that. Occasionally, I've seen where somebody will apply and they have the bulk of the requirements, but they may be short on one area. And being forthright with, I might be a little weaker on this area, but here's what I would do to shore it up or learn more about it or something. So in case that is something that the person would want to pursue. So not always will a hiring manager consider somebody that doesn't have one of the requirements if they have a full candidate pool of people who do, that they feel are viable candidates. But occasionally, if their candidate pool is small, they may consider those people that have most, but not quite all. So I believe in forthrightness and transparency in all materials. So the job description on the hiring side, the materials of the cover letter and resume on the candidate side, and in the conversations as things progress.
In the cover letter, succinctness, certainly. Is it a matter of matching my response to the job description, at least picking out perhaps a few what I would consider salient terms and addressing very specifically that? And another question, Julie, can I be too folksy, too personal in a cover letter? Do I need to make it just a very lofty, very extremely professional, however we define that? There are some people's writing style. Some people say, well, you're too folksy with this. And just curious if you have any guidance in that regard.
I think there is a balancing act there. I think you should definitely be professional in terms of the language you use and the way you present yourself. But I think in that cover letter, it's an opportunity to start to give the hiring manager an idea of a little bit about who you are when you show up for work. So when I would ever apply for positions back when I was doing that, and I have my own business now, so I'm not applying for positions like that, but I would always try to embed some of the key attributes that I felt I brought to the table. So like I am very driven, I work very hard, I follow through, things like that. I tried to give a sense of who they were hiring embedded in there as well. So even if they had not called those out, I felt that those were strengths I could bring to the table. And I wanted to be forthright about those to see if they were a match. So even when I was a candidate applying for positions, I still was doing it with a mindset like as if I was a hiring manager. I'd want to get a little bit of a sense. I don't think overly casual, overly folksy is appropriate. I think it's still a professional communication, but I think you can embed a little bit of your personality, especially as you show up to work, how you show up to work in that cover letter.
All right. Now, as the interviewee, should I study the company, the website, and should I know as much of the history of the company as is available on the website? Should I go to the library and try to study any history of the company? How much of that preparation do you think is useful for a very successful interview?
I think it's important to do some research. I don't think it's important to know everything you could find because many companies have a ton of information. But what I find that background research to be helpful for is in crafting questions. And I always go to an interview as a candidate with questions prepared because I want to do my side of things of seeing if this company is going to be a match for me. So that's part of that background research preparation, looking at their website, articles that may be written about them. I don't tend to go to the library. I tend to do it online. But and if there are reviews or things like that out there, if I can see any of the business challenges that the position I'm hiring for might be addressing, I want to be aware of those. So I am doing a little bit of background research because when I ask my questions, usually you're given the opportunity to ask questions as a candidate. I want to embed my knowledge into those. So I saw on your website, I'm wondering about how that shows up for this position, whatever it may be. You know, it's unique to each company and position, but I want to show them that I've done my homework without having to say, I did all the research. You know, I don't want to highlight that in that way, but I want to embed it in thoughtful questions I ask so they can see I've done it, but I'm also getting the information I want to know about this organization, about the position, challenges, things like that.
I want to follow up on your notion that the interviewee should be prepared to ask questions, because I've always thought that I'm just there to answer questions, nothing more. And a letter comes back that, yep, you're still in the hunt or you're not. When you mentioned I should be prepared to ask questions, what I can infer from that is I need to know who I am, which sounds overly simplistic, but I know the environment in which I function best and can perform best. Therefore, are you suggesting, Julie, that I have the right to question the interviewer, the hiring manager, and ask about the company? And then if yes to that, are you going so far as suggesting that I could, if I have the confidence to do so, say that I just don't think this is the right, best company for me? Thank you.
Yes, I think, yes, that people do have the ability to say that. And I think that as a candidate, you want to go into the interview knowing that you are checking this company and leader out as much as they are checking you out to see if it's a fit. Because, I mean, one of the biggest reasons people leave organizations is their manager. So if you don't get a sense of who this hiring manager is as you go in as a candidate, you're losing a huge opportunity to make sure this is going to work for you. So I always have questions around leadership style or that kind of thing. So if I'm the candidate, when I'm given the opportunity to ask questions, I will ask, explain to me what's your leadership philosophy, for instance. I'll ask organizational questions too. Tell me what the biggest challenges the team is facing, or, I'm trying to get a sense of what is happening in the organization. And people tend to be pretty forthright. There can still be occasional surprises after the fact, but if you do your due diligence as you're interviewing, you're going to be much more likely to set yourself up for a positive experience if you opt to move there. I would say there have been organizations I've interviewed for that I've known right away, no, this won't be a fit, or a leader. And when that has occurred, I don't tend to say this isn't a fit right within the conversation. I tend to finish the conversation professionally and appropriately to see if I learned anything new. But then if they do connect back with me, trying to move me forward, I am very forthright of, I realized upon reflection that there are a couple of things that just don't seem to fit for me, and I'm going to be pursuing other opportunities instead. That's a perfectly viable response. I have had candidates opt to move to other organizations. The position may not be exactly right, the organization, the leader, and that's okay, because each person, each candidate or leader is looking for a unique situation at any given point in time. And if everything aligns, great. And if it doesn't, that's also okay.
You made a very important statement that people leave organizations. You use the term because of the manager. I'm just going to use a little bit different term. People almost always leave an organization because of people. It's not the mission, it's not the vision, it's because of other people. We're just not getting along well. So let me ask you, from an interviewer's perspective, you used the term open-ended questions. And for anyone who may not know, I think, Julie, that means it's not a simple yes, no, but something to the effect, give me your thoughts about. You have to explain the response to that. And it's got to be more than just the one word, yes or no. And through that, we're able to determine more about a person. But Julie, is there an art to devising open-ended questions such that you can get to know the person in a way that perhaps you would never know with just the simple closed-in yes/no questions?
I do believe there is an art to asking questions. I have a research background and I have training in qualitative research. So I have kind of a passion around this area. So I'll share a few tips just for your listeners to be aware of. Some of the questions I ask are preference type questions. Like, tell me what you prefer in your manager. Tell me what you prefer in your team members. Tell me what you prefer to be doing in your day-to-day work and what you don't prefer in all those things. So some are preference related, and they're all open-ended. Like you said, not yes, no. They can't answer with a one word kind of thing typically. Then others are situational type of questions. So I will ask something like, tell me about a time you've experienced workplace conflict. What was the situation and how did you handle it? Or tell me about a time you made a mistake in your job, a large mistake, let's say. What was the situation and how did you handle it after the fact? Or tell me about a time a client was dissatisfied with something you did. What happened? So those are more situational, and you can get a lot of kind of interesting responses from asking those situational and preference types of questions. The preference types, I really end up getting a lot of words that hint toward culture and values, what people find important. The situational, you start to understand how somebody thinks when they're addressing difficult situations. They're not easy questions always. People don't like to talk about conflict often, or a time when they made a mistake or whatever. But I think they're important because they help give a deeper sense of the candidate. And likewise, if I'm a candidate, I hope I would come up with some good questions for a leader. Like a candidate could ask a leader that may hire them, can you tell me about a time you struggled with somebody that reported to you? What was the situation? You can turn the tables and ask similar questions back, and it's fair game. This is an interview. It's meant to understand each party's thoughts and perspectives.
What are your thoughts about interviewing, either as the hiring manager or as the person interviewing for a job? Let me know about any apprehensions you may have, or even better yet, if you have overcome the former apprehensions, either as the interviewer, the hiring manager, or the person being interviewed. Let us know what you have done to overcome any of those past apprehensions. Some people are apprehensive about being interviewed because they're concerned about not being able to answer questions correctly. And there's some hiring managers who are apprehensive about the hiring process because they know the potential cost of having to replace anyone they hire and not finding the right person who may interview well, but later they determine the person is not the right person for the position. Let's know your thoughts. Let's share this podcast with others, and let's learn together. You've just introduced something that I never knew existed. It is all right for me as the interviewee to ask a situational question of the interviewer, or I want to make sure that I understood that, Julie.
I think it's okay. At least that's the way I interviewed people. If somebody asked me a question like that, I'm completely fine with it. And if I wasn't, I'm probably not the right person for that candidate who asked the question, right? So if as a leader that made me uncomfortable and that person asked the question, then we're probably not a match. I think it's perfectly fine. I will say that while I think it's important for candidates to ask questions, I want to make sure that the portion is clear. I think that the bulk of the interview should be driven by the hiring manager, but typically at the end or somewhere within, the manager will give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions. And I have a list of maybe 10 questions typically. Some leaders are really good at sharing some of that information throughout the interviewing process, and some of those might be answered as a result. So I only focus on maybe 5 or so that are really critical for me after what I've heard from them. So I have more prepared than I will actually ask. And I'm only asking those that I think will really help tease out whether this is a fit for me. So if I'm getting a sense from the manager, they've been forthright about their leadership style, how they work with their teams, how they handle like getting feedback and things like that. If they've been forthright like that, I might not ask some of those situational, but if I'm getting an uneasy situation or a feeling from this, I might ask some of those situational to see what the reaction is like. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, let me ask you, Julie, a call to action. Then there may be, and likely are, separate calls to action. One for the interviewer who would say, if that person felt comfortable saying so, I am apprehensive about knowing if I'm bringing on the right person. I'm not sure that I know what the right questions are to engender the right interaction and so forth. Then a similar type question from the interviewee. What are some actions I can take? Because I really feel uneasy. I'm maybe easily intimidated. I don't know if I'm going to answer the question correctly. How can you work with each one of us, very possibly in totally different responses, but the call to action to give the interviewer a higher confidence that we're going to bring on the right person, and the interviewee similar confidence that I'm going to know who I am, and we'll each be able to determine if we're right for each other.
So I would say first on both sides, the word is preparation, and it looks different on both sides. So on the hiring manager side, I believe that it starts with that job description, really making sure you're getting embedded in there the key things that you want to see. Then I always write my screener, first interview guide, and second interview guide ahead of time, because I know what I want to tease out in those questionnaires. But I add the step right before every interview of re-reviewing the materials of the candidate and jotting any questions I have as I look at those materials. Like I might say, tease out this skill a little bit more because I'm not clear, or whatever it may be. They change jobs often, ask about that, whatever the specifics are that you see in the materials. So preparation ahead of time. On the candidate side, again, it's preparation, but the way it looks on that side is doing that background research. I always ask, usually it's HR departments scheduling interviews, and I always ask, if not provided, who am I interviewing with? Because I want to know that. And then I will try to look up information on them as part of my research too. LinkedIn is usually a very good source, not always, but I try to understand a little bit about the hiring manager or the people I'll be interviewing with. Sometimes it's a group. If it's a group, when the HR is saying you're going to be meeting with, let's say, 4 people, can you tell me their roles? I usually ask, so that I'm at least aware of that as a candidate. And then the preparation of your questions ahead of time. So as you look at the materials on the company, there are probably some cultural or things directly related to your job description that you're seeing in the business plans or what have you. And then about the leader. So you'll see some from his or her collateral items like LinkedIn or other things they may have online, but that may bring to mind some questions. So jotting those questions down ahead of time so you're prepared. And then always on both sides, being ready to jot down additional questions as they occur during the interview, because as you have discussion, new questions will crop up. Pare it down to that one word preparation, but it looks different on both sides.
Julie, I do have a question. Going back to the beginning of the podcast, you mentioned in the interviewer relationship skills that they're looking for in the candidate. So how do they do that? I mean, how do they look for and know the relationship skills that are needed for each position?
I think it's important to understand what your position is and what you're looking for as a leader. So when I was hiring, almost all the positions I was hiring as a leader, I was hiring team members who were going to be interfacing with clients. I was hiring people that had to be really good at client service. And so if that's a key area for me, then I am going to be asking, well, first about their background. I would be asking, tell me where in this resume. So usually the way I conduct my first interview is I say, walk me through your resume and highlight for me the things that you see included in the job description. And candidates usually do a great job of that. And then I ask follow-up questions. So if client service was an area, can you tell me more about that situation where you were doing client service at this job, and trying to dig a little deeper. And then those situational questions that I was mentioning, if client service is one of the key attributes, tell me about a difficult client service situation that you encountered, or tell me about the best client that you've ever worked with. What made it so successful? So you're digging into those areas that you find important. So it really depends on the job duties and the leader and the culture. And sometimes we, as leaders, might have encountered something difficult with an employee. Let's say I hired somebody who was really not good at client service. And then the next time I'm really focused on that. Try not to let past situations get in the way of other things you should also be exploring. Like, I also need really good communication. I also need project management skills or whatever it may be. And so how do you, tell me how you manage a project from beginning to end? How do you work with people during that? So it's digging into the areas that you're looking for, and that is truly unique by position, leader, and culture. Does that answer your question?
It does. Uh-huh.
Are statistics important to you, Julie, in learning about a client? And statistics such as, I increased our client base by 38.2%. I increased revenue by 57.8%. Numbers, statistics such as that. Is that important to you, or is it more of a personality interaction and the relationship type of thing? Might even be the tone of my voice.
I think savvy candidates know that it's usually recommended to put some measures in your resume where you can. So if you're a salesperson, if you've increased revenue by X%, I think that's a very important measure to put in there. If you've managed budgets of a certain level, if you've increased incremental revenue from clients with good client service, or whatever it may be, there are lots of ways you can measure, and it depends on what the job is. So I think those are good items to put in where they're meaningful. I don't think a resume that's just number after number is as meaningful as teasing out, I like to talk about it as both the hard and the soft skills of anything. So I talk about hard and soft skills in leadership, but it's also in any position. Even when I hired people like statisticians, which is a very hard skill, right? I still wanted some soft skills. And when I've been in positions of hiring or helping to hire, say, therapists or people that are very soft skill driven, there might be some hard measures to put in there, like how many people they've served or that kind of thing. So I think it's a blend that rounds out the picture the best, depending on the type of work you seek. So as a candidate, it's important to know or try to glean what is the type of hiring manager who's going to hire what I want to do going to be looking for, and try to embed some of those in there.
On behalf of our listeners, thank you for your insights, your expertise. Just listening to you in a very conversational tone helps a lot of us over the uneasy feeling of, as a hiring manager, can we have the confidence that we're going to bring on the right person? And as the interviewee, you've helped me overcome just flat scared. Not sure if I'm ever going to answer the questions correctly and so forth, but as we have the ability to just have a conversation, I think, Julie, you're going to bring out the very best in us. So thank you, Julie, for your expertise and your insight into this. And again, I want to encourage our listeners to look for your book, The 5 Senses of Success. We can overcome anything. Julie, thank you so much for your insights and expertise.
Thank you. Take care. It's great to be here.
Is interviewing possibly a laborious task for you, or is it a very strenuous task because of the uncertainties of just what to expect and some uncertainties and vagaries of how to determine who we are as those who are interviewing or those who we are as the interviewee? And can we determine through discernment just who the right person is if we are the hiring manager? And if we're the person being interviewed, can we come across with a confidence through preparation that we want this position, we know what we're looking for, and we have the courage to say that this is not the right position if that would be the case? Interviewing can be a daunting task, but as Julie says, as we are prepared, we can overcome the anxieties, the uncertainties that we have. I want to encourage you to look on YouTube. I have done 3 videos of interviewing: the pre-interview, the interview, and the post-interview, just how we can best prepare for interviews. What I've done in those 3 videos is complementary to what Julie is saying in the context of preparation, being prepared for the interview, and listening to those with whom we are interviewing and interacting effectively with the hiring manager if we're the interviewee. I want to encourage you to listen and watch those videos, and it's all a part of being prepared for the interview and have the courage, the confidence that we can project a very positive image with the hiring manager, and we can have a confident interaction without being arrogant, but rather we know exactly what research to do before the interview. We know exactly what to look like, how to dress, how to conduct ourselves during the interview, and we know how to follow up with the interview and the hiring manager, thanking them for the opportunity to audition for a potential position, even if we are not selected for, or even in the case where the company we believe is not the best fit for us. But it is a matter of leaving a very positive impression with people and advancing others through this process. We hope we can warrant a 5-star rating from you with this podcast. We hope you'll want to subscribe to this podcast series. We hope you'll want to share this podcast with those within your circle of influence, Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections, your Instagram friends and associates. We hope you'll share this information with everybody. We hope you'll engage with us to let us know what experiences you have had and how we can benefit others by presenting the best possible image that we can by projecting that positive image and helping others overcome any anxieties they may have. Let's share, let's advance people, and let's do what we can to project the very best image we can by helping others. We look forward to working with you and sharing your experiences.